Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories coming out of the region today. Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to meet South Korean President Lee Jae-myung on the final day of the APEC Summit, his first visit to South Korea in over a decade. In a written address, Xi Jinping announces China will host next year's APEC Summit and calls for regional cooperation on green energy and aging populations. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says he wants to work with APEC countries to tackle challenges in artificial intelligence and population change. Lee says South Korea aims to become a global AI leader, even as it struggles with the world's lowest birth rate and rapidly aging society. US President Donald Trump praises his deal with Xi Jinping as long-lasting, saying it will stabilize markets after months of disputes. North Korea dismisses plans for peninsula denuclearization as unrealizable pipe dream, criticizing talks between Seoul and Beijing. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney accepts Xi Jinping's invitation to visit China next year in what analysts call a turning point in bilateral relations. China's Shenzhen 21 rocket blasts off from northwest China, carrying its youngest astronaut yet to the country's permanent space station. Taiwan's new opposition leader, Cheng Li-wen, warns of a risk of war with China, but pledges to seek a new era of peaceful engagement with Beijing. Now, Chinese state media has reported that APEC 2025 Leaders Summit has signed the APEC Artificial Intelligence Initiative and the APEC Cooperation Document on responding to population structural change on the last day of the summit. Now, meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has spoken on the last day of the APEC Summit in South Korea's Gyeongju. Xi has announced that China will host the APEC Summit for the third time next year, and he has added that the summit will be hosted in November of 2026 in the city of Shenzhen. The Chinese president has hailed the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. He's also said that APEC's role has become more prominent in recent years, and that APEC is the most important platform for economic cooperation in the region. Now, in his address, Xi also proposed the establishment of a World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization. He said that the APEC countries should deepen open-source technological cooperation and create a competitive open innovation ecosystem. He also stated that he hopes for APEC economies to take the lead in implementing the World Trade Organization's Electronic Commerce Agreement. He has also spoken about Chinese initiatives that he hopes to implement in the country. He started and said that he will continue to implement relevant initiatives on clean energy and green transformation in the economy. Xi has said that China will also implement a dual control system for total carbon emissions and intensity. He also, of course, addressed China's population challenges, which affects the entire East and Southeast Asian region, and has said that the country will develop a silver economy to tackle the aging population setbacks. Now we're joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, as the APEC summit wraps up for another year, Xi Jinping's statements ring out across the region from South Korea. Of course, let's start with artificial intelligence and, of course, technology in general. How does APEC as a body, as a bloc, lead the world in artificial intelligence, particularly, of course, in China, and how does it rival the United States in that field?
In this case, China tried to be the leading country of the Asia-Pacific region through the APEC. But at the same time, it is clear that if China leads, China will dominate the region. So that's why the regional country around China do not like China's leading in the region. So in case of the artificial intelligence, especially this is a concerning point, because on surface, everyone should cooperate, that is good for everyone, and that is true. But the reality is, if China try to develop the AI themselves, this AI could be perfect for China's political system. For example, in the past, China developed AI, but through this process, AI collects information through the internet, and they start to claim communist regime is not effective government. So that's why China immediately stopped to develop that AI. And finally, recently, China published another AI which does not criticize Communist Party governance, just avoid this kind of discussion because of sensitive, the AI said. So that's why this is the AI China is developing. So view from other country, this is not a proper AI. So that's why even if the China say the cooperation is needed, that view from other country, this is not proper indeed.
Yes, and of course, Dr. Nagao, what was referred to by both Xi Jinping and also South Korean leader Lee Jae-myung was the issue of an aging population. Now, 15.4% more than now is above age 65 in China, which is of course rapidly aging before full economic maturity. And South Korea is seeing even more of a problem with 40 to 45% projected to be over 65 by the 2060s. It also has a very low fertility rate and a shrinking workforce. This is a problem which both leaders have vowed to tackle. What are the problems that an aging population causes?
Aging population will change the structure of the economy, structure of the society itself, because we can imagine no working people, but only elderly people in the society means that how much money they can collect is matter to support the life in elderly people. So that's why this is related with the pension, related to its economical development, related with the system itself. So everything could be changed by this aging situation. So rapid change of the society, the impact is very strong. So that's why gradual change is acceptable, but rapid change is something impossible to accept or impossible to adjust. So that's why how to deal with is the matter. And in this case, the simple way is, of course, increasing the younger generation to maintain the population structure, aging structure. That is one of the methods. But in this case, suddenly the baby growing up to the 20 years old guy is impossible. So that's why in this case, the immigration issue is matter. Or another one is how to make the work effectively. For example, the robot is another one of the answer, or AI is another answer, or how if one person work looks like 100% is another way. And the final way, another way is, of course, there are many people in other countries. So that's why some countries, especially Southeast Asian countries, established a facility to accept many elderly people to enjoy their life with the golf course, hospital, and supermarket of their country. Indeed, such kind of resort facilities really building in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, or the country. So these are the answer how to deal with it.
Now, of course, finally, and Dr. Nagao, we are running out of time, but another thing that China has vowed to continue is its development in green energy. Due to, of course, Donald Trump now being at the helm of the United States and his openness against green energy and his, of course, famous drill, baby, drill phrase, his advocacy for fossil fuels. Is there room there, of course, now for Beijing to become this leader in the green energy space and, of course, the entire APEC region?
Environment issue is one thing, but which country will get benefit more than others is another thing. So that's why in case of the United States, the US system is mass production and mass garbage they create. So that's why in this case, environmental issue is one of the taboos to change their society, and losing the competition could happen. In this case, China has an advantage. For example, 90% of the solar system made in China or something like that. That's why China prepared well. So if the environment issue is the main part, there is a possibility China will dominate the world and hegemony will happen. So this is not acceptable politically. That's why such kind of the gap has happened.
Okay, Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to speak to you on these issues. We have further updates from the APEC Summit, where Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney agreed to visit China after meeting President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the summit in Gyeongju in South Korea. The talks have marked the first formal leader-level engagement between the two countries since 2017, but has delivered no major breakthroughs on trade. Carney's office has said he accepted Xi's invitation to visit China at a mutually convenient time. The two have discussed trade issues including agriculture, seafood and electric vehicles, which are areas that have been hit by tariffs and anti-dumping duties in recent years. Xi told Carney that China values Canada's readiness to improve ties and is willing to put relations back on track. Carney, who is on a tour of Asia to expand trade beyond the United States, warned earlier that the era of rules-based trade is now over. Now we move on once again, and President Donald Trump called his recent meeting with President Xi Jinping incredible, touting benefits for US farmers. He said they agreed to lower tariffs on China in exchange for Beijing cracking down on fentanyl, resuming US soybean purchases and keeping rare earth exports flowing. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says China will buy 12 million metric tons of US soybeans through January and 25 million tons annually for 3 years. Trump called the deal wonderful and long-lasting, saying he got on very well with President Xi. He said farmers should buy larger tractors and more land, adding China is working very hard to control fentanyl. Let's in fact listen in to President Donald Trump's statements.
The deal with China is going to be wonderful. It's going to be long-lasting. I got really along with President Xi very well, as you saw. You were there. Many of you were there.
Yes.
And I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's really good. I'd love to get rid of the extra 10%. I put a 20% penalty on. I had a great conversation about it with President Xi yesterday, and I'd love to get rid of the other. As soon as we see that, we'll get rid of the other 10%. Other than that, we haven't cut the tariffs at all with China. But we're going to have a great relationship with them, I think, for a long period of time. If we have a smart president, we'll have a great relationship. We don't have a smart president, which is also a very strong possibility, then we won't have a great relationship. But China is, the meeting with China was incredible. The meeting with Japan, incredible.
Now we move elsewhere in the region, and North Korea has dismissed the idea of denuclearization of the Korean peninsula as an unrealizable pipe dream. The statement has come just hours before a planned summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and South Korean President Lee Jae-myung on the sidelines of the APEC Forum in Gyeongju. Seoul had earlier said the two leaders would discuss denuclearization efforts, but North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Pak Myong-ho says such talks only show Seoul's lack of common sense, insisting Pyongyang's status as a nuclear state is irreversible. Reports state that North Korea will continue to prove that denuclearization is nothing more than a, quote, pipe dream. Okay, now to discuss this is Hidekazu Sakai. They're a professor at Kensei Gadai University, joining us live from Japan, Osaka, Japan. Thank you very much, Professor Sakai, for joining us here on the program. Of course, tensions and relations within the Korean peninsula have been tumultuous for years, of course, since North and South have been divided. However, the current leader of South Korea, Lee Jae-myung, wants warmer relations with Pyongyang. He's been vocal about this, even joked about it with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. Why has North Korea responded in this way and seems to be completely off the idea of denuclearization of the Korean peninsula?
Okay, nuclearization for North Korea is fundamental part of its security policy for a long time. Actually, it has been since late 1980s. So it has been almost more than 3 decades of North Korea's the policy that they need nuclear weapons against the United States. And the nuclear weapon has its very distinguished character that even if you have a few nuclear warheads, you can prevent your opponent's attacks or sort of offensive the movement against the country. Therefore, nuclear weapon is very economical and also affordable weapons, even for poor countries like North Korea. So we all know that North Korea is a very poor country, and they have been threatened by United States and South Korea, and also they consider Japan as a potential enemy all the way along since 1948 its foundation. Therefore, for North Korea, nuclear weapon is something they cannot abandon.
Yes, and Professor Sakai, what do we know about North Korea's current nuclear capabilities? Of course, Donald Trump in his first term dubbed Kim Jong-un Rocket Man. Is this a worthy title?
Well, North Korea has been certainly developing its missile capability. They could reach their missiles to the territorial space of the United States. But it's unclear how much they can do it. I believe still United States confident about the nuclear superiority over the North Korea. So this is a very, how do I say, political tool for North Korea that they can still talk to the United States. Otherwise, they're always afraid of a surprise attack by United States and the South Korea allied force, sometimes. So they cannot just ignore the fact that they're still inferior to those, allied forces and even Japan. And the other thing we need to know that North Korea and the China relationship is not as stable as we might think. China doesn't like the North Korea's nuclear weapon positions, basically. And so they had to accept that because just North Korea was so desperate to possess it. But fundamentally, China doesn't like it. So actually, it's a kind of agreement for China, United States, South Korea, Japan. They want to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula as a whole. And I'm not quite sure about the Russian's position, but Russia doesn't. I guess Russia is not comfortable with North Korea's nuclear the positions either. Therefore, except North Korea, all the parties surrounding North Korea, they like to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, basically.
Yes, Professor Sakai, do stay with us as we have further updates from the Indo-Pacific region. But now we move to Taiwan, and Cheng Li-wan has formally taken charge as the new chair of the Kuomintang, which is the island's main opposition party. After taking charge, while addressing the party members, she warned that Taiwan faces an increasing risk of war with China. Cheng described the situation across the Taiwan Strait as the worst of times, saying the island's security faces a constant threat from Beijing. Meanwhile, she also vowed to open a new era of cross-strait peace. The Kuomintang party, which traditionally supports closer ties with Beijing, now looks set for a further shift in that direction under Cheng's leadership. Chinese President Xi Jinping also congratulated her after her election last month, calling for renewed efforts towards reunification. We're once again joined by Professor Sakai to discuss this. Professor Sakai, is the new opposition leader Cheng Li-wan correct in saying that Taiwan and China have never been close to war? Of course, Beijing issues provocative statements. It conducts provocative actions in the South China Sea with various military drills. Is this new opposition leader correct in their statements in saying that they are living in the worst of times and that a war in Beijing is on the horizon?
Okay, this is something that the difference, the approach to the China between the current the ruling party and opposition parties, because current government is right. The approach is strengthen military power. They wanted to raise the military budget to the I believe 3.5% very very soon, and then I think they aim at increasing at 5% of GDP by 2030. And the current opposition party, nationalist, doesn't like this because this could create more tensions with China. They could lead to the war. So this is a very tricky the part of the how they approach to China's recent military development. I think a ruling party see that we need to balance against China's military enhancement by increasing Taiwan's military power. But the opposition parties see this as maybe there's a counter effect, that counterproductive effect for this situation. And we kind of have been sort of buying the discourse that China could invade to Taiwan by 2027. That way, the Xi Jinping can continue the staying in power. That's maybe some people say that's the only way for Xi Jinping staying in power in China, because there are a lot of the issues surrounding him these days. Therefore, nationalists, it's very sensitive to this, the China's the movements, and we should be remember that the Chinese Communist Party and the Nationalist Party were enemies, during the Chinese Civil War, many decades ago. But interestingly, they agree that there's only one China, including Taiwan. But the current ruling party doesn't accept this idea that Taiwan is basically a different country from China. Therefore, both parties do not want to have a war, but they just have a very different, even totally opposite approach to this security issue.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Sakai, for your insight, and thank you very much for taking the time and joining us here on NewsX World. We now move on to our final update, and China has successfully launched its Shenzhen 21 crewed spaceship, sending 3 astronauts into space to begin a 6-month mission aboard the Tiangong space station. The spaceship, atop a Long March 2F carrier rocket, blasted off at 11:44 p.m. Beijing time from the Zhuangquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China. The Shenzhen 21 crew consists of mission commander Zhang Lu, who was previously a member of the Shenzhen 15 mission, alongside flight engineer Wu Fei and payload specialist Zhang Hong Zhang, who are each embarking on their first space flight mission. Earlier, a special send-off ceremony was held for the astronauts before they departed for the launch site, with crowds of well-wishers gathering to see them off. After lifting off as scheduled, the Shenzhen 21 spaceship separated from the rocket around 10 minutes after launch and later entered its designated orbit. And that's a wrap on today's China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more updates from around the planet.
Thank you.